So, good morning. I'll be very brief. We just presented a check for $10,000, and that brings the total we've invested in ProKids to just over $148,000 since it was started in 2010. I'd also like to say or commend the MOTL Town Council for a number of things. The property tax increase and the threshold, the continued support of ProKids, the new support of Pro Funds, which is going to help low-income adults access sports and recreation, cultural activities, and your unbelievable support for LC Community Wheels, which truly makes the service affordable. You can go from Bars Corner to Broad Cove for $15 return, which is really incredible. United Way, we invest $5,000 a year in that program as well, and our money is used to help people that can't afford that $15. So on behalf of the community, thank you for what you've done, what you're going to do. It's appreciated. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you, Mike, for your continued support of all these programs within our municipality and throughout our region. It's definitely evidence when you can see the amount of children and young adults and everyone that has had the opportunity to participate as a direct result of the funding that comes through United Way and the programs that you offer. So thank you.
And thank you. And none of this is possible, by the way, without our local donors. If there's no local donors, there's no funding. It's as simple as that. So this year we were lucky enough to invest just over $244,000 in 25 programs. We also operate an additional 10. So again, thank you to our donors and thank you to council.
Is there anyone here for public input? Please put your hands up so I can see how many people we do have. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you have your hand up as well? Oh. Okay. All right. So we have 3 individuals then, so it would be 5 minutes each. So if you'd come forward, please, and state your name and the community that you live in.
First time for some handouts. I'm not sure how you want to distribute them, if you even want to distribute them. Some extras there. Morning, Mayor and members of Council. My name's Andrew Himmelman. My family and I reside in Newcombeville. It's great to see some more taxpayers out here participating and doing their part. I disagree with only having 15 minutes of public input, and I strongly believe all of us ratepayers should be heard. Toting transparency and then hearing staff members spending resources and tax dollars trying to figure out how to get public input. Well, we're all here. Maybe a motion should be made today to increase this 15-minute limit. As I only have time for one topic today, I'm going to start. I assume this large crowd is here for the first reading of the Coastal Protection Plan. I'm not a climate scientist or whatever title they want to create for that study, but I can read and I love looking into things that I'm not knowledgeable about. So after listening that staff is using directives from the IPCC report, which are essentially created for the United Nations, and after reviewing the 5th and 6th IPCC reports and then comparing Modal's egregious first reading here today, I've got some questions. As members of council research any of these IPCC reports, the CCCR reports, any of the natural resources reports, the provincial ones, I've printed these off and I've included them and they're going around to you today for public record. A little context on these IPCC reports. They use wording like low, medium, and high confidence. Under what context does Modal believe they know even more than the federal government? I ask this because the 3.97 meters, the planning number that's been created in this document, isn't a recognized number by provincial or federal governments. The federal government report, the CCCR 2019, report is listed from 44 centimeters to 139 centimeters, with the 139 centimeters being an extreme case. The province even advertised today on their website as a 1 meter rise, and this is from data from 2022. The U.S. climate change reports list 2.5 meters as extreme. So why does Modal choose 3.97 meters? On top of all of these reports, the 1.39 meter is the average, which it seems all the data from these IPCC reports are coming from. 2.5 meters is extreme and very unlikely of happening. So now I've heard Modal must use the latest data, but where is this latest data coming from? Is it coming from Geneva, Switzerland, or is it coming from our provincial or federal government? Because I've gone through as many documents as I possibly can, including natural resources ones, which I've distributed. And in the national or natural resource document, guidance for use of relative sea level projections, it actually has a directive in there of how planners should plan. And I'll read it to you. For planners wishing to consider these larger amounts of sea level rise, the spatial pattern of relative sea level rise in Canada could be approximated by adding the additional global sea level rise to the median projection of RCP 8.5, or to the enhanced scenario. Keeping in mind this 8.5 gives 0.75 meters of sea level rise by 2100, while the enhanced scenario is 1.39 meters. If you choose this 3.97 meter magical number, as far as I'm concerned, that more than doubles what our province is even saying. Are you guys going to start assuming the cost that's associated with, I don't know, are we going to start relocating Riverport? Because that's going to be underwater. Have you guys considered that the building permits in Riverport are going to cease to exist? LaHave, Blue Rocks, Green Bay. Should we start talking about these homes and the business property values being driven down so big corporations can snap these up as cheap properties that have been created by the Modal Planning Department?
There's 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you prepared for public litigation if this document gets passed through? The province has spent millions of dollars mapping possible areas to create these MPS agreements. And I think Modal is opening itself up Pandora's box. In closing, the federal government's chosen 1.39 meters, and everyone else is maximum of 2.5. So I'm not sure where the 3.97 meters comes from, but you guys should start asking staff members here. There are many things that we can do in the meantime, like erosion prevention, educating the public on infilling, or even create a public platform like an enhanced coastal planning committee, because in this document, it's widespread, it's over the whole municipality, and I'm not sure how coastal planning affects Hempford, Barris's Corner, and Maplewood. Thank you for your time today. Take a look at all those documents, and it's got the latest 6th report from 2023, and it's not 3.97 meters. Thank you.
So I would take our next speaker. And please state your name and the community that you're representing.
Hi, my name is Tabitha Deschamps. My family and I live in West Northfield. I am an avid softball player. I'm a mom of a 3-year-old little girl, and we are here for the playground at the Mark Ball Fields. We understand, well, as of last week when ball started, that the ball fields is gone, the playground was gone. Many kids were very upset. My little girl cried, his little girl cried, and they became friends at the ball field. There are 3 leagues who use the field from May until October. Each league has about 70 people, which usually most of them have 1 to 4 children in tow to play, to make friends, to get exercise, to be outside, and to be busy while their parents can be active and do things they enjoy while playing ball. We understand, or so we've heard, that there was a plan in place to replace the field to make it accessible, which is fantastic. That's a great idea. But that was about a 5-year plan, $400,000, which 5 years is a long time. 5 years' time, his kid's not going to be using it anymore. 5 years' time, my child will be 8. A lot of kids will, that's a long time to not have a playground in place. The benefits of having that playground in that same area, we have kids who get exercise who a lot of times don't. A lot of kids would be sitting on their tablets or their parents' phone while their parents play ball. Their kids build friendships that they otherwise wouldn't with older kids, with kids from different backgrounds, different areas. It keeps our families together at the ball field. Having your children seeing you being active just sets them up for a positive start in life. My child goes to the gym with me, she goes to ball, she loves it. She loves seeing other kids there and playing, and she thinks she's strong and can run fast, and that's so important. I find more and more technology is just overwhelming our children, that we need to keep this one thing there for them to see, to be active. It's just so enjoyable to watch, and for them. And this is used by hundreds of children weekly. I know last night at ball there was upwards of 30, 35, 40 children just there with their moms and dads watching, or with their siblings even, while moms can play. Not having that field there too, a lot of moms, a lot of dads don't have the means to pay for a babysitter to get out for that 2 hours a night, to keep them active, to keep them engaged in activities that they enjoy. Or they don't have the family. Like, I don't have family nearby to watch my child, and I enjoy bringing her. I like her seeing mom being active. So yeah, on top of the 3 leagues using those fields, we have the high school who will sometimes use it. So parents come and they bring siblings. What are younger siblings doing while their older siblings are playing ball? They're either going to be nagging at mom for her phone or asking for snacks, when with the playground there, they can go make new friends and play and be entertained. It's very important. And then on top of that too, that's a host of multiple tournaments throughout the summer, throughout the spring, and that brings people from other areas. Like, I'm from Shelburne, I grew up there, and we have people who come up from there, from lots of other places, who bring their families, and they rely on that playground, those things, the kids there, to be able to play and to come. And if they don't have stuff to keep their children entertained, then we won't have as big of tournaments, and that will take away revenue from local hotels, local shopping, local restaurants, and I think we would notice a big difference. We do understand that the playground was taken away for safety concerns, and obviously as a mom and a father here too, we want our kids to be safe. You know, that's our goal. But what we would like to see happen is, we would like that playground replaced, and we have gotten a quote from a Nova Scotia company that they quoted us $65,000 total with installation, everything, and it could be done this year to replace what was there at the Mark Ball Fields. And this would be it would be nicer than what was there. It would be safe, it would be inspected, and it was, by the end of the year, they could have this done for us. And then for the accessible playground that was mentioned, maybe a plan in place, we're not really sure. But we think that the better option for that playground would be down at the lower part of the Mark, down where the buildings are, the pond, where there's a lot of activities that happen throughout the entire year, whereas the ball fields are only unlocked in the summer. And if we were to unlock that in the wintertime, we risk damage to the ball fields, which happens at New Germany Fields, the Hebfield Fields, just people on 4x4s. So we think that it's really beneficial and very important to have a playground at the Mark Fields in the original spot. I see that there is a toy box there, which occupied a lot of the children for about 20 minutes last night. So not quite a good fix. But for $65,000 for an almost immediate solution to keep hundreds and hundreds of parents and children happy, I think that's a very good investment. And then to continue on with the accessible playground and the installation maybe at the lower part, that'd be wonderful, because then it would be good for everyone. But up at the fields, not quite the best place for it. So we have letters that are being passed out from some parents that stating the importance and how they've used it and how they've grown up and how their kids grow up and look forward to it. And also there are going to be letters submitted directly from a lot of our league presidents stating the importance and everything too. But yeah, we can get our quote emailed to whoever needs it from the company that we had from Cobequid Consulting for the $65,000. But we would like to see a playground replaced as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, it was removed for safety reasons, but the intention was always to put a playground back. So the third speaker, please state your name and the community that you're from.
My name is Karen Dempsey, and I live in the community of Crescent Beach. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the mayor and councilors who attended the public consultation meeting last night. Sorry? Oh, you can't hear me?
Or the podium down, one or the other.
I usually have a very loud voice, but it's not hard to hear. Yes, so thank you to those councillors and the mayor who attended the public consultation session last evening in Petite Riviere to discuss the future of the common lands at Cape Lahave Island. As I know you're aware, the public engagement is an important component of municipal government, and certainly the public consultation is a part of that engagement process. I think you folks do a better job of it certainly than when I was a municipal councillor 15 years ago. However, I feel obligated to note that there's a difference between public consultation and a public information session. And unfortunately, last night felt to me much more like a public information session than a public consultation session. I heard lots of folks around me, sitting around me, who kind of under their breath were saying, well, this is obviously a done deal. And it wasn't that anybody has any issue with the Nature Trust. I think you have to understand that when you're dealing with coastal communities that have a complicated history with government, that the way you conduct yourself perhaps has to be somewhat different than in other situations. And we have a complicated history with with government in the area that I live in and the council district that I live in, simply because they've had to take on various levels of government over the years. I mean, back in the 70s, it was the federal government who thought they could swoop in and create the Lahave Islands as a national park. Later, it was the provincial government who thought they could remove the ferry. And then again, the provincial government when they wanted to take away our community school. So we're a pretty active and involved group of coastal communities that are in both Councillor Bell and Councillor Hason's district. And I guess my concern and my question for you coming out of last night is why it took 5 years to conduct the first public meeting to do with this issue. It was made clear last night that it was 2019 when, in fact, the Nature Trust came to council, seeing if there was, some opportunity to work with this council for a conservation easement. So this process has been in the works for 5 years. I know there was some community consultation in the form of an online survey in 2020. I know there was the pandemic would have slowed things down, but there was obviously research and background information going on. And I think what came out of that online survey and consultation was clearly repeated voices urging community meetings, face-to-face community meetings. I understand it was difficult to do that during the pandemic, but there have been several years since the pandemic. I guess what I want mostly for folks to take away from my comments today is the need for additional meetings in the community. I would like to see one that's actually on one of the Lahave Islands. I mean, there's a community hall on Bell's Island. There's the Marine Museum. There's lots of facilities and opportunities to do that. I think you need to do a better job of explaining what the benefits are to a conservation easement over the current status of the land as common land. And I think you're going to need to do this in order to garner community support for your efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now move down to the approval of the agenda, and there is one item that we would like to add to the agenda under 8.2 LCLC Financial Year-End Projected Deficit, and we have that slated in there as a presentation for 10:15, I believe. So it is now past 9:15, and I thank you for your presence. Oh, sorry. I have to go back up and get the approval for the agenda with that added item. Moved by Councillor Hubley, seconded by Councillor Moore. Discussion on the motion. Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We'll get down to the approval of the minutes, I guess, of April 9th, 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Oikel, seconded by Councillor Vino. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. And the special council meeting of April 23rd, 2024, council. Moved by Councillor DeLong, seconded by Councillor Haysom. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Business arising from the minutes? We have amend resolution number 2024-082, change purchaser name. And I would turn this over to our CAO to walk us through this one. It's in relation to a surplus piece of land and the ownership name.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So as you'll recall, Council passed a motion approving the sale of a portion of land to Scott McGinnis. This land had previously been declared surplus and went through the sale procedure. Mr. McGinnis has contacted us and requested that we change the name of the buyer from Scott McGinnis to his company, Stones Age Contracting Limited. And this is for the sale of PID 602-95086, and the sale price would remain in the amount $24,500. So because Council passed a motion that has specific name on the advice of legal counsel, we thought it would be appropriate to bring it back to Council and formally request a change in the name of the buyer.
And I'd ask Councillor Haysom if she'd be prepared to move that motion.
Certainly. To Our Honor Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of Council, I move that Municipal Council amend Resolution number 2024-085 by changing the name of the purchaser from Scott McGinnis to Stones Age Contracting Limited for the sale of PID 602-95086 in the amount of $24,500, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Haysom. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor DeLong. Discussion on the motion. Question has been called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Now I will go down to the 9:15 presentation, Happy Community Project. And we have Barry Braun with us this morning, so welcome.
Time. Let's see if I can figure out how to make this thing work. Sign in. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm having problems already. Are you Tina by chance? Awesome.
Oh, I got signed out.
Technology and me don't get along.
Well, this was signed in, and somehow I got signed out. We may have to. Yeah, let's do that. Just gotta-
I know there's one that Okay. I think, other than that, there's nothing on the screen over there. We're okay. Sorry for the delay.
Not your fault, this is just,
We have to press an F4 or something? or
no, it's this thing
something like
here.
that?
There we go, that should work now.
Yep. Maybe.
No signal, it says.
There we go.
Okay.
Technical glitches.
So, yeah, technical glitches. Well, thank you, Mayor and councillors, for giving me this time. Belonging neighbors are fundamental to our well-being, just as much as housing is and food is. It's essential for our well-being. So the question I have is, what if it was normal for neighbors to know, care, and support each other throughout the municipality of the District of Lunenburg? I know that there are many vibrant communities within the municipality, but there is also loneliness. Stats Canada says around approximately 50% of Canadians across Canada experience loneliness. So, I'm Barry Braun. I'm the founder of the Happy Community Project, Good Neighbor Builders, and the Good Neighbor app. And what I'd like you to know today is that it can be normal that neighbors do know, care, and support each other. I have a good friend who lives in Tantallon who moved there 35 years ago. The neighborhood's turning over. And 2 years ago, someone moved directly next door to him. He'd go out, wave, but he never really had a relationship with the person that lived next door. And then recently, a moving van showed up, so he went over to find out what was going on. Turned out that the gentleman's wife had died 6 months earlier, and nobody in the neighborhood even noticed. Now, that story sounds dramatic, but it's not unique. I've heard the same story in Moncton, I've heard it in Calgary, I've heard it in Stratford, I've heard it in Toronto, and I've heard it in other places. So, our mission in life is to make it normal that neighbors do know, care, and support each other. So what is a good neighbor? Well, we've asked hundreds of people of what a good neighbor is, and what they tell us is they're somebody that they can trust, they're approachable and friendly, they care about us and the neighborhood, and we can count on them for support. And if you think about those words, trust, friendly, caring, and supportive, they are the essence of the definition of belonging. What they want is to belong. Here's the reason why I'm doing it. That's my granddaughter, Abby. She's a little older than that right now. But I was reflecting on her future as to what her world is going to be like when she grows into adulthood. And frankly, I don't like that picture. So I've decided to do everything I possibly can to mitigate the outcome for that. And where I focused in on is community. If she can find the support that is now somewhat rare, if she can find that support as she's dealing with the issues of the future, then perhaps she can have a better time of it. Just a couple of days ago, I think there were 800 scientists that said that global warming temperature is going to normally be 2.5 degrees in her lifetime. So I hope that she does have the support. But connectedness is important in the immediate too. Connectedness, as you all know, affects mental health, social health, physical health. People are happier and live longer when they're socially connected. But it also does something for the community. When the community is more connected, there's less crime, there's more volunteerism, and there is more economic activity. And these things are all supported by research. Communities are happier. So I'm not alone in doing this. I have a team around me. I'm the guy wiggling around in the bottom right there. But they come from, they're all highly skilled professionals that come from a broad range of disciplines. And what we do together is enable your community to be a good neighbor community, or can do that. And so how we do it is we partner with you as the municipality of the District of Lunenburg. We won't come in and do anything on our own. We will only do it if we are in a partnership. What we bring to the municipality is the Good Neighbor Method, and the Good Neighbor Method is based on science. This guy here is Dr. Bruce Dienis, who's a PhD in community psychology, and he and I together have developed the Good Neighbor Method, which is founded on research that brings into what does people have to experience to have a sense of community, what motivates them to be part of a community. Polyvagal theory, love the word. What that means, our experience in talking to people are afraid to talk to their neighbors. They're afraid to go over and say hello. I've asked people to do that, and they tell me that it would either be very awkward to do that or even terrifying. They've used the word terrified to do that. So what polyvagal theory does is short circuits the fear and replaces it with social engagement. It's a process for doing that. And if it's not normal now that neighbors do know, care, and support each other, that is a cultural thing. We've developed that culture, not unique to this municipality. We've developed it across the developed world, as it turns out. And if you want it to be a different norm, then you have to shift the culture. So what we do is go through a process of shifting the culture within the municipality so that it does become normal. So the Good Neighbor Method isn't just a simple come in, hold an event, and everybody's happy. It's a very comprehensive process. And it works. It's based on experience. My own background is that I was a consultant for organizations on cultural change. And so that's what I bring to the process, and then Bruce brings the research and science and his intense experience. Because people are afraid to meet their neighbors, we've made the process so that they feel safe in the process, and that because people use the excuse, I'm busy, I don't have time, we've made it simple for them to be engaging with their neighbors, and we've sprinkled in fun in the process as well so that there's more motivation to come in and do this. So during the process, one part of the process, we ask people whether they actually want to be good neighbors with each other. And they generally say yes. But then how are you going to stay connected with each other? You come here to this event and then you go home and everything's the same. How are you going to well, we created a special app called the Good Neighbor app. And it was designed on 3 principles. One is it uses a little bit of technology to get people talking face-to-face with each other. It's actually been nicknamed the anti-social media social app. The second criteria is that it's very incredibly easy to use. We know that 80-year-olds are technology adversive, and so we've made it simple for them to use. And we've made it so that it's safe. We have high security. There's information is not going anywhere. There's no ads, no algorithms deciding what they can see and what they can't see and all that sort of stuff. So the goal is to enable people to have relationships face-to-face, not digitally. So how does it work? Well, once we've formed a partnership with you, we hold a kickoff event, and the purpose of the kickoff event is to recruit some early adopters within the community to apply the Good Neighbor Method in their neighborhood. And after they've had some experience with it, 4 to 6 months later, we showcase them in a celebratory festival so that the rest of the community can see that this is really possible. And out of that, we then recruit another round of Good Neighbor connectors until we reach a tipping point. And after we reach a tipping point, well, because what people tell us, most people want to be more connected with their neighbors than they are, it's easy for them to start coming on board. They now feel safe to do it. And it becomes generally the norm in the community. So the timeframes for doing this, the early adopters, we work with them for about 6 months. We expect to get 4 to 5% of the neighborhoods involved by recruiting a neighborhood connector within each neighborhood. And then after the celebratory festival, we expect to recruit another 8 to 10% of the neighborhoods involved in the Good Neighbor method. And once that happens, we've reached a tipping point where then by far the majority of the rest of the community wants to be good neighbors as well. It now becomes normal. Okay, there we go. So yeah, it becomes normal. So a connected community is key to a happy, high-functioning community, and that is our goal. We started this process in Windsor, Nova Scotia, and here's a quick story about it. Windsor had a story 5 or 6 years ago that nothing ever happened here. This place is so divisive. If somebody comes up with a good idea, we'll fight about that idea until the idea dies. This place is, nothing ever happens here. And I don't know if any of you know Windsor, but from 5 or 6 years ago, that was a very true story for that community. Today, if you go ask a Windsorian what's it like to live here, they'll say it's a fantastic place to live here. There's so much happening here, and look at how we care for each other. What a wonderful place to live. A very different story, and that's because the culture of the community has shifted. So, our goal, neighbors connecting with neighbors, face-to-face, not digitally, but actually going over and having relationships with each other. So Gladys Tabor said, being a good neighbor is an art which makes life richer. I personally don't agree with that. I think being a good neighbor is actually an essential part of living. I think it's more than just making life richer. So, here's what some mayors say about us. It's Abe Zabian said that we changed the mindset of 20,000 people, West Hants County. Anna Allen, who was the mayor back then, said, I see a really big difference. Wendy Robinson, who was the mayor of Stewiacke, said the ease of which it can be implemented was really impressive. And we'd like to bring that to you. So what my ask of you, I have here a proposal which Tina has electronic copies of. I also have a brochure. I've got a couple of hard copies here, but Tina has electronic copies of that. I hope that Tina can share that with all of you. And what the proposal says is that we'll raise 90% of the cost of this if you'll put up 10%. And what we're doing right now is bringing a small group of municipalities together where we can make a blanket application to a COA for funding. And we'd love to have municipality of the District of Lunenburg to be part of that. So that's really what our ask is.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. We'd entertain a few questions.
Yeah, please. I'd love to
We have
have
how many?
questions.
We have a few minutes left for questions. Councillor Hubley.
Just a quick question. You said that you would raise the 90% and the ask of Modo would be 10%. Do you have dollar amounts to add to those percentages?
Sure. There's a formula that we use in the proposal as to what it would cost. My guess is that your share would be somewhere around $7,000.
Okay. 7,000?
7,000.
Yes, okay.
Plus there's some in-kind
Yep.
services that we'd also like you to do, like provide event space and that sort of stuff.
Councillor DeLong.
Yeah.
I just have a comment. I agree wholeheartedly with the philosophy. I think that building community and building that community fabric is an important activity that we all need to take part in. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Just a comment on that. The traditional, it's not that you as a council haven't tried to build community in the past. The traditional way of doing that are things like providing public spaces, like the playground that you were talking about, and holding events and that sort of thing. And those all contribute to building community, but it doesn't go quite far enough because people are afraid to maintain a relationship. Yeah.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I do love the concept.
Thank you.
And I am happy that I live in rural Nova Scotia because we embrace those ideas.
Yeah.
I do have a question about the app.
Yep.
Was that designed or put together by an American firm?
No, it was designed by me and programmed by a student out of Dalhousie who is now graduated into being a technology officer.
The reason I asked, in your presentation you used the Canadian spelling of neighborhood, but in the app it's an American spelling.
I know. Thank you. Thank you for noticing that. No, it's not only Canadian, it's Nova Scotian.
Yeah. Deputy Mayor Oikle.
I think this is a wonderful idea, and it seems like a lot of our communities now are really looking towards joining themselves together. An example is in Riverport and the work that they're doing down there in their community.
Yeah.
Because our municipality is so large, are you looking at a specific area? Because there is quite a lot of diversity within our municipality and in our
I
communities.
appreciate that, and I've been doing some thinking about that. And I think the best way of doing that is for us to have a conversation with you and Trudy, the development officer, to figure out exactly what the reach will be and that sort of thing.
Councillor DeLong.
Sorry, I did think of a question. Where else have you done this, and where else are you targeting?
So that's a simple question with a more complicated answer. So we've done our work of bringing community together in Windsor, Stewiacke, Fredericton, Glace Bay, Calcutta, India, Colorado, etc. What we've learned from all of those experiences is that we're very, very good at changing culture of community. But the way we were doing it before was very much our hands-on, which made scaling very difficult, and it also slowed the whole process down. So through COVID, we rethought the whole process, and we're now just relaunching that process. Wolfville, Yarmouth, Truro are so far strong indicators of yes. They have to go through more process. I know you will too, your government. And government goes through process. One of the places that we also do things is with landlords. Landlords are a lot easier. You just sit down and have a conversation with them, and they say it's a great idea, let's do it. But but with government, I know there's more process involved. So that's one of the reasons why we're actually lining up municipalities now for fundraising. With landlords, you don't have to, they just write a check. With municipalities, we have to go through this fundraising process. So we're lining that up now with an expectation of actually launching sometime late fall.
So if I could piggyback on that question, when you say like municipalities or in making an application to a COA, are those municipalities here within this region?
Within Nova Scotia.
Within Nova Scotia?
Yeah,
okay.
Yarmouth is one. Expecting Wolfville to be another one, for example.
And I guess working with the international community, one of the things that I often hear when it's in relation to settlement communities is that we're friendly, but we're maybe not that welcoming.
Yes,
And-
that's fairly, that's part of our cultural
And that
heritage, I
is
guess.
something that has been often, we'll say hi to anyone,
Yeah,
but inviting anyone over for a meal or actually taking that second step
yeah.
is.
And that's part of our
Yes.
process is actually making it normal that there are neighborhood activities rather than, and neighborhood activities that stretch out beyond the in-group, if you like. So one of the things that we're doing, we're starting to work with Truro, with the Welcome, Colchester Truro Welcome Network. And the whole point in there is to make it so that newcomers, the traditional way of welcoming newcomers is you find a few volunteers that have some relationship with them, and then you connect newcomers to newcomers.
Yeah.
Right? Well, our goal is to connect newcomers to the rest of the citizenry.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Moore.
Just a comment. In the district that I represent, north of the 103, New Germany and surrounding communities,
Yep.
they have a coffee party every Thursday morning.
Awesome.
And the amount of people that are attending that coffee party, the amount of new people that moved in since, like over COVID and since COVID, it's just been miraculous. The friendships and
Yep.
the place is packed and people get to know each other. It's great.
Yeah, awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I know that it's live and well in places, and then in other places it's weaker. So we focus on the weaker places.
All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In this folder is a written proposal plus a brochure. I'll just leave this.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, my computer.
We are going to take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we'll have our second presentation then.
I write my name. I have a habit of leaving things.
Welcome back, everyone. And we are going to go into our second presentation, the LCLC Financial Year-End Projected Deficit. And we have Jeanette Hupka with us, and she is the General Manager for the LCLC. So welcome, Jeanette.
Thank you for having me. Can everyone hear me? How about that? Is that
Yes.
better? Fantastic. I'm here to present the operating deficit for the LCLC for the 2023-2024 operating year. Very short presentation. We do have a deficit. The forecasted deficit is coming in at $239,510. And while we did absolutely exceed our budget for revenues, we also exceeded our budget for expenses as well. The primary areas where we were over budget in our expenses were our professional fees, and that was due to the audit. It was in our licensing, our IT licensing fees and support. So that's a whole big bucket of IT and software. We were over there. We were also over significantly in our utilities, and we were over in our wages and benefits as well. We did not realize the revenues that we thought we would realize from our special events, and that impacted the deficit as well. And so the forecasted deficit is sitting, as I said, at $239,510 right now.
So again, I do have some questions, but I'll open it up to the floor first if there are questions. Deputy Mayor Oikel?
Thank you. So some other places is in housekeeping, miscellaneous, which is like $5,000 more in miscellaneous, if you could explain that more, and the vending expenses. I'm not really understanding why that would be at 24 compared to what you were thinking of at 14.
For sure. So the miscellaneous, the $5,000, it was an unbudgeted staff Christmas party. So that's where we were over in that miscellaneous expense. And you said also the housekeeping we were over. We were over in housekeeping due to having to do repairs to some of the equipment that we use, and then, of course, the change in supplies.
So that wouldn't have gone underneath your facility repairs and maintenance?
It is our small equipment repairs. It's the way that they're separated out. So big repairs go under that, but like some of those repairs, some of the repairs to the housekeeping equipment would go under there.
Okay.
And
then
what was the third
the
area?
vending machines.
The vending machine expenses. So the vending machine expenses are, it's the product that we purchase to go in. So with increased vending revenue, we have the increased expenses to offset, or to support, sorry.
Councillor Hubley.
I have a couple questions, just bear with me, and I'd like to acknowledge that I do know that you inherited this mess, but I do have some questions.
For sure.
So on the first page, I have an actual version 1 and an actual version 2. Do you know which page I'm referring to?
I do know what page you're referring to.
Why is that?
It is because when I received the first set of financials, there were some discrepancies that needed to be corrected. There were some journal entries that needed to be voided. Again, I inherited, so there were some journal entries that were being done that I didn't catch, so those needed to be corrected. And there were a couple of there were some revenue discrepancies that needed to be addressed. So that's why the version 1 and the version 2, it was really for the accountant to know where the variances were.
Yeah, I actually like the visual on that. So this is on the revenue. My first question is the library rent. Wasn't that at fixed at a square footage rate?
Was fixed at a square footage rate. However, the lease renewed, I believe, in December, and so that's why we have a variance there.
Okay, that makes sense. Where were my other ones? Just one second. Okay. sorry about this, I had the IT and licensing, but you answered that. Utilities, that was the rooftop units, correct? Taking more power than expected?
Yes and no, a couple of things. So the solar didn't come online as soon as we thought it would be, and then, of course, the increased usage from the new dehumidifiers that were installed.
So is the expectation that the solar is going to offset this cost in the next years?
It's been budgeted.
Okay.
It won't offset it. It won't bring it down
Drastically?
drastically,
No.
but
Okay.
it will absolutely reduce what we are paying.
Okay, and wages and benefits, like there's a substantial difference there, and if you could speak to that, that would be great.
Sure. There were some, from what I can see, it just wasn't budget high enough to account for such a high COLA that was put in place last year. So substantial, also staff turnover indicates that as well. So 30% of a wage or a salary goes to train people. We did have significant staff turnover over the last year, and so a lot of training was needed.
And you're saying that the cost of living increase was not accounted for in the budget?
It was accounted for in the salaried positions, but not in the salaried and the full-time, but not the part-times.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Haysom.
Thank you. I just wonder if you could speak a little bit more to the IT licensing fees and support, because it is a big jump, and so if you could explain a little.
There was a piece of software that was purchased last summer to help with the facility preventative maintenance and maintenance schedule. So it was a large purchase that was made over the summer. It was a substantial piece of software.
Any other? Councillor Moore.
Refresh my memory, Jeanette. The miscellaneous, you said it was an over expenditure on Christmas get-together?
It was an unbudgeted.
Unbudgeted. So you have a budgeted line for Christmas in your original budget, is it?
In the original budget, it was a miscellaneous, in the original budget, there is a miscellaneous line, and that's where the staff Christmas party is usually ended up.
Yeah.
It was not budgeted for this budget, and so I felt it was important to do a Christmas party for the staff.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Vino.
Thank you. So originally you had budgeted for a deficit of, am I reading this right, 69? No,
No.
it wasn't a deficit. It was a,
We cannot budget for a
you
deficit.
don't budget for a deficit. In the budget for the next year, what does that final line item look like?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
So in the budget coming up, I mean,
Yeah.
since I've been on council, every year there has been a deficit. In the upcoming budget, what is the surplus that you're projecting, if any, or is it a break even?
It is a break even for next year.
It's break even.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to take a couple of years at a break even before we can start looking at surplus.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
But again, we don't budget for a surplus either. We budget to meet our operating costs based on our revenue. I do have some comments that I would like to make, because this has been an ongoing issue for the LCLC, and one that I have definitely emphasized at the board table that is unacceptable to continually be over budget. The municipality and the town of Bridgewater, according to the MOU, pick up the deficit 50-50 is what happens with this deficit. And it's never seemed to, it's almost like a blanket statement that I'm almost thinking that the MOU needs to change. And I look at the MJSB, I look at other operating boards that we have, and we have to live within our means. And this is another organization that we have to get on track. If the budget is not correct, then the budget needs to be correct so that it can be reflective of actual expenses and actual revenues. When I look at the utilities, I'm still going to say that we were sold a bill of goods. We had an energy audit done on the facility. We had companies come in and give us, we had project managers, we had everything intact, and we were going to save this enormous amount of money by doing all these energy efficiency things in the building. They were carried out. We had to replace air handling units in the building. We had a air quality problem in dressing rooms, air quality problem in the facility from the very beginning that related to moisture content, even dripping on the ice, different things that caused issues. This was addressed. The air handling units that have been put in place are doing the job, or they appear to be doing the job. However, when they did the energy audit, they didn't factor in the size of the air handling units that were coming in place and the energy that it would take to operate these air handling units. So it definitely created, instead of being able to budget for, as we were told, a decrease in our energy bill, it has actually gone up. And when I say gone up, it's really gone up. $120,000 over the budgeted amount last year, and that's substantial. And the solar that has been put on the facility will not offset the amount that we're talking about here. There still needs to be efficiencies had within this building, and I'm not sure where they're going to come from, but I have asked that Efficiency Nova Scotia come back to the board and explain some of their projections that they originally had made to us and do another audit on where the deficiencies actually are in the building, because there's definitely deficiencies somewhere here throughout this process, or the calculations that were used are not realistic calculations. That's on the utility piece. On the vending piece, the vending expense, that's vending machines, correct?
Correct.
So if vending expenses go up, that's a good thing, because that means that revenue has gone up, and I don't know where that revenue is in the revenue piece at the top.
ATM and vending?
Oh, there it is, okay, but it hasn't gone up as much as the expenses, and I don't understand that unless it was at a time when we had a huge shipment come in right before the end of the year, because we shouldn't be losing money on vending.
Do you want me to, can I speak
Yes.
to that? I'd love to speak to that. There was a cost increase for our vending machine that I caught our product cost increased, and there wasn't the corresponding increase to the price that people were paying for that product. So that was one of the changes that I made once I identified that we'd had an increased cost. So hopefully in next year's budget, we will see a more proportional there. So I increased the margin.
Again, those are things that we definitely do need to keep a handle on. There was another one here in relation to the wages and the budgeting. And again, this year's budget is supposed to be reflective of the actual CPI increase.
It is.
Or the cost of living, and definitely trying to hold accountability for the budget. And it may mean that some items need to be delayed otherwise, rather than just it coming back to the town and the municipality at the end of the year for added items. And I think that's, the onus is on the board members for the municipality and the town to make sure that that happens. Are there any other questions? So we are seeing, when we're looking at the total deficit of $239,510, 50% of that belongs to the municipality, correct?
Correct.
Councillor Moore. And this is projected. These aren't audited statements.
Correct.
Okay, so I'd have to pull my budget book out that we did, but did we budget knowing that we probably would have a deficit, or maybe have a deficit, or are we going to take our 100 and whatever out of contingency?
It actually is built into our budget for that amount, correct? No? Okay.
No, so we annually budget for the budget that's approved by the LCLC board and presented to council. When a deficit takes place, it comes out of our operating reserve.
Okay, thank you.
So this will be the focus of a future finance committee meeting, where we will present on the plan to deal with the deficit once the actual numbers are confirmed.
But this has come back before this point. We have addressed this.
Yeah.
I have raised this in the updates from the LCLC
Yes.
as well.
I just couldn't remember
Yeah.
if we had put it in our original budget or, thank you.
Any further questions, comments? If not, thank you, Jeanette, for your update. And this is a requirement of the LCLC. Any projected deficit that the board realizes they are having at that time, it is supposed to come back to council for approval at that, or for notification at that time. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move down to up to 7.1, award of RFB 2024-01-400, grub control, liming, and fertilizing, Mark Ballfields. And do we have our Director of Engineer here, or who is Marta? Oh, sorry, I didn't even look up. Oh, Maria, all right. Please go ahead with this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as noted, I'm here to seek approval to award our RFP 2024-01-400, grub control, liming, and fertilizing for the Mark Ballfields. So staff posted an RFP to seek proposals from landscape professionals for grub control, liming, and fertilizing maintenance services at the Ballfields. 2 proposals were received and accepted by the deadline of May 2nd and evaluated by a staff committee comprised of myself, our Director of Engineering, Stephen Pace, and our municipal engineers, Jamie Burgess and Tyler Richardson. So we had the 2 submissions come from Nature's Reflections Landscaping Limited and Elmsdale Landscaping Limited. So both of the proposals received met all of the mandatory selection criteria and were evaluated based on criteria laid out in the RFPs. So we had a technical proposal as part of the RFP and a cost proposal. So the technical proposal was evaluated based on company overview experience, staff certifications and accreditations, work schedule, application rates, proposed services, and references. The maximum number of points eligible under this category of the technical proposal was 80. And Elmsdale Landscaping had an average technical score of 73 and Nature's Reflections at 62. We then moved on to the cost proposal, which could make up a total of 20 points in the evaluation. And Nature's Reflections Landscaping came out with the total top score of 20 and Elmsdale at 18. Overall, combining the technical and cost proposals together, we have a total score of 91 for Elmsdale Landscaping and 82 for Nature's Reflections. So following those evaluations, Elmsdale received the highest overall score, and it is the recommendation of the evaluating committee that the RFP be awarded to the overall top-ranking proponent.
Before we put a motion on the floor, I did have some questions, but I see there's a lot more questions. So I will go to the other questions and then come back to mine. I should have put my head up first. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. When it comes to scoring, as representatives of the taxpayers, it comes down to the pricing. As for technical scores, as for this kind of score, we answer to the pricing, and we're answering to it a lot of stuff right now about pricing. And when it comes to pricing, Nature's Reflections Landscaping came in at 20, and Elmsdale Landscaping came in at 18. To me, that looks like Nature's Reflection was the lowest bid. They are local. They are from Lunenburg County. Why? and I respect staff's recommendation because I know you sit down and you do all the math and all that kind of stuff. But I'm wondering, it used to be way back that I remember coming to council for tender openings. I don't know if it was in our procurement policy or what it was, but it went away. And we used to sit down, the tenders were opened, and we used to know who was tendering. And we brought this up before, but we know our areas, we know our people. We want to keep it local. And for me to see the pricing score of 20 for Nature's Reflections, knowing that they're the lowest bid, and then having to explain to my taxpayers why we're taking it out somewhere else. So I would like to see the procurement thing.
So if I could comment on that. So under the procurement legislation, we are not permitted to apply a buy local advantage on services that are over $50,000. So the provincial government, in conjunction with all of the various international agreements that we have in place, they set the thresholds. So when staff, as part of our operating budget, we budgeted $67,000 for this work on the ball fields. This is one of the few instances where we have seen in the last number of years where our budget estimate is higher than the cost that came in. Typically, as council is aware, our budget estimates are lower than the costs that we've been seeing. So given that the budget was set at $67,000 and the bids that came in were above $50,000, the buy local provisions weren't applied. And this is an RFP as opposed to a tender, so it's not just pricing. It's got that technical component, and pursuant to our procurement policy, we set out in the procurement document what the scoring criteria are, and then staff review it and score each of those criteria, and that's how you come up with the technical component. The cost component, low cost gets full points, and then there's a formula that you apply to see what the other bidders get, and it's based upon the difference between what they propose as cost and what the low cost is. So that's where you get the 20 and the 18.
Supplementary, Councillor Moore.
So somewheres in these formula, is there a points for local?
So we're not allowed to apply points for local where the services is above $50,000.
And that's because it's a two-year contract.
This is a two-year contract, and you can't
It's the
contract.
cumulative
You can't
effect.
contract split.
So how do we change that?
So it's provincial.
Yearly.
Yeah, and it's based on international
So where do
trade
you have to
agreements.
go, Ottawa? Geneva, I'm not going to Geneva, no. No, but I am adamant that we need to keep these tenders. I know where our hands are tied, but when I have to explain to the taxpayers that it's not going to a construction company or someone in this area, it's very heartbreaking. Thank you.
So just to be clear, council has the authority to award to whichever proponent it
one they want.
wants. The staff recommendation is based upon the scoring criteria, but council at the end of the day ultimately has the discretion to award. This is just the staff recommendation based upon the RFP that was put out.
I can make a motion that we...
Not till I go through my speakers, you can't. Councillor Vino, please.
Thank you. Very similar to Councillor Moore's questions that she posed. With both companies being so close on all aspects, it really comes down to price for me. Year one, the difference of $28.61. Year two, there's a difference of $31.46.10, which would be a savings of $6,007.10 over the 2 years.
Councillor Greek.
My question was local, and I'm good.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I do understand the difference between requests for proposals and tenders, but at the end of the day, and I just went through this recently on another tender that we awarded, which was very little difference, but I want to be seen as supporting local businesses where we can. And I do know that there is an allowance of 10% sometimes when prices might be higher, but when they exceed 10%, it seems like our hands are tied. But when awarding something like this and we're putting in we want someone to be certified in grub control. I don't really understand where you see the qualifications of grub control. So is that a profession, a certification that I'm unaware of? I want to sum up by saying, when we can buy local, I need to be able to do that and justify to my local taxpayers that we're doing what we can for local business. I'm not condemning your choice. I'm just want you to look at it from my point of view.
And to answer the question, yes, there is certifications associated with that. So Red Skill Landscape Professionals and pesticide certifications for applications of any sort of grub control type product.
And based on your earlier comments, both met that certification, correct?
Yes, Elmsdale had the Red Seal landscape certifications for all staff members proposed to be used in the applications of the products. And just further to the RFP, so with the RFP, we utilize that when we don't have a firm scope of work. So we want the proponent to describe the services to best meet the outcome we're looking for. And so the application rates and the services and the scheduling, they are unique to each proponent, and that is part of the evaluation on the technical side of things, which is why this wasn't a tender. We left it to the subject matter experts to propose the services to best mitigate the risks of a reinfestation of our ball field turfs. And then we used our evaluation criteria to go through the scoring, and this is where the outcome landed here.
Councillor Hubley.
I want to talk about the scoring criteria, the technical score. I want to know specifically, what does Elmsdale Landscaping have that our local Nature's Reflection doesn't have? And is it that important to the project that we can't go with the local?
Yeah, so to that, they're both very strong proposals. Both companies that submitted, we're thrilled with the results that came in. So really happy with both proponents, and as noted in the document, both had sufficient proposals to provide adequate services that we are looking for. So when we do, that's part of the process of the evaluations, we do look at the information that's presented in the RFP. So some of the tipping points that just nudged Elmsdale up would have been related to the staff, the schedule of services, the proposed services and products and application rates, as well as the staff certifications and experience that they were proposing as the team to service the ball fields.
Deputy Mayor Royko.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the certification. So in your report, it mentions that staff would be able to do the liming and the fertilizing. So obviously they're certified to do that. So is there a possibility for our staff to become certified to put on the grubs? Because to do the grub mitigation, because this is going to be an ongoing problem in the future as well. And I'm just wondering whether or not we can just eventually, hopefully, do it in-house, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, so working towards those training opportunities and those certifications is certainly something that can be looked into.
Councillor Haysom.
My question's been answered.
Councillor Hubley.
So I'm not an expert in this by no means, but I really don't feel that the differences are that important that we would use someone that isn't local. I would like to see us use I would support the motion if it was the local company.
So that does end our questions, I believe. Everyone. Councillor Moore.
I would like to put a motion on the floor. I move that, and I agree.
Please, with the motion, then
Okay,
I'll let you
all right.
speak.
Okay. Let me see here. Okay, I move that to Her Honor Mayor Bala Forgetson and members of council, I move that Municipal Council award RFP 2024-01-400 grub control, liming, and fertilizing Mark Ballfields to Nature's Reflections Landscaping Limited for the amount of $24,960.
No.
No. Okay, which
Plus
is,
in year one, plus.
okay, $27,456, correct? Oh, my
In year
God.
two.
Give me the number. Add those together. Give me the number. 52152. Okay,
$52,416.
Okay. For the amount of $52,416, excluding HST, for 2 years of maintenance services. Thank you.
So moved by
I screwed that
Councillor
up.
Moore, and I'm going to repeat that.
Yeah, please.
That Municipal Council award RFP 2024-01-400 grub control, liming, and fertilizer, Mark Ballfields, to Nature's Reflection for the amount of $52,416, excluding HST, for 2 years of maintenance services. Is that correct? That is the motion, and it was seconded by Councillor Hubley. Discussion on the motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So, council members, in discussion of the award of this RFP, it would be helpful if you focused on why you believe this proponent represents the best value for the municipality, which is the consideration that should be at the fore. As I've indicated earlier, local is not something that can be considered because the total award is over $50,000, and we are legislatively prohibited from making a decision based on a buy local provision that does not apply. So if the discussion could focus on how this is the best value, that would bring us in line with our procurement legislation as well as provincial legislation and international trade agreements.
And typically price is that.
Yeah, best
item.
value.
Yes. So I had Councillor Haysom, I believe.
Sure, I know my hand wasn't up first, but I can speak to that directly.
Okay.
So in terms of benefits to the municipality, obviously the price is lower. We're definitely going to be expending less gas and travel costs. But I think that the other thing that's worth considering is that we are developing an asset within our own municipality. So if we have a company that doesn't have 100% of their employees as Red Seal certified, allowing them to access this sort of tender will allow them to increase the level of expertise within their workforce. And so that is us investing in our own community.
Councillor Bell?
Well, Mr. McEwen has answered part of it. I'd like to see a company that is local, that is using individuals to fulfill their job, which has less of a carbon footprint traveling within the municipality to do their business rather than coming from two neighboring municipalities out. I think that everything that goes into this decision should be taken into consideration. And one of the aims of this municipality is limiting the carbon footprint on the jobs that we do and how we live our lifestyles. So put that down.
Deputy Mayor Royko?
I was going to repeat the same thing that has already been said regarding the travel and the carbon footprint.
Councillor Hubley?
No,
Oh.
I have nothing to add, I agree.
Councillor Wynot?
A little history on the courses you have to take for those controls. In my past retail, it was very expensive to take these courses, and they had to be done every couple of years. And it's a very hard course to take. So to have our staff trained for that, it's going to be really hard and real expensive. So I stick locally or get somebody else to do it, because it really is hard.
Further discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We will move down to correspondence from Nova Scotia Parks, Hurdles Beach. And is someone speaking to that? If not, I would like to read the letter that we did receive, if I can find the page number. Councillor Vino.
If you're going to read the letter, there was a part of the letter in the second paragraph that did not make sense to me, no matter how many times I read it. Something's missing in that. So when you do read that,
I probably will
I'll listen to
stumble
see
is
if
what you're telling me.
anybody else picks up on that.
So this is a letter that we received from Nova Scotia Parks, which is a division of the Natural Resources and Renewals Provincial Government. And it's Hurdles Beach Provincial Park pending designation. And Hurdles Beach is anticipated to be designated under the Provincial Parks Act later this year. The pending Hurdles Beach Provincial Park is a 4-hectare strip of coastal dune and beach below the municipally owned and operated parking lot and access area. Plans to designate the property as a provincial park were included in the 2013 Parks and Protected Areas Plan. With 129 provincial park properties operating in Nova Scotia, the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables has no plans to install park infrastructure or bring a regular staff presence to Hurdles Beach following designation. The designation will protect the land and the public's access to the site for low-impact outdoor recreation uses and nature appreciation. Certain activities such as hunting, camping, open fires, and off-highway vehicle use when the Parks Act and regulations come into effect. Certain activities. I guess we'll wait until our staff person gives us some more indication of what that actually means. The department understands that Hurdles Beach is an important outdoor recreation site for the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and recognizes the valuable services the municipality provides the community. The park designation is not intended to affect municipal recreation operations. Future municipal plans proposing to make use of the park land may be authorized through the Department of Parks and Outreach Division upon request or review. Parks and Outreach have been in contact with municipal staff to share information about the designation and are available to review any municipal plans for the property going forward. And it's signed by the department. So, Marta, can you explain that certain activities, is that not permitted? I would think. Yes. So certain activities such as hunting, camping, open fires, and off-highway vehicle use is not permitted when the Parks Act and regulation come into effect. They missed a portion of that statement. So, continue, please.
I don't have, so I did meet with some members of Nova Scotia Parks on site to discuss this, or to look at the site and the beach and what some kind of go over what we were hoping for the site as it was part of the accessibility audits and potential changes there. On site, they did express an interest to move into a management agreement with the municipality, but that's not addressed at all in any of the correspondence we've received so far. So I can answer any questions. I could try to answer questions or provide information of what I've received from our correspondence outside of this letter, if there's more.
So again, designating it will give it the protection that...
Just to be designated as a park, but with
Yes.
no increased services from the province.
Yeah. Any questions in relation? Councillor Vino.
Not necessarily a question, but for those who just read the agenda package and don't read, or don't listen to the minutes, the last sentence, the clarification on that, and also the first sentence in the second paragraph with 129 provincial park properties operating Nova Scotia. There just needs to be some grammar corrected there.
But
from
again, this
them.
is not our letter.
But if somebody reads that,
This is not our letter. This is a
No.
letter that came from the department.
I'd go back to the department and say,
Yes.
can you rewrite this?
So any further questions? If not, that is correspondence only to advise that it is designated. Will be. So we have recommendations from committees and boards under 10.1, Police Advisory Board, proposed Joint Police Advisory Board. And I will turn that over to our Deputy CAO, Alex Demerick.
Thank
This
you very
came
much,
as a
Madam
request
Mayor.
from another unit.
Yes, just a quick little bit of history. The town of Lunenburg approached the other municipalities using the RCMP for policing services and requested that we consider a joint board, which is permitted under the Act. Council received a report on this a little while back, this fiscal, or at least this calendar year. It was referred to our Police Advisory Board, who reviewed and discussed. As noted in the report, the primary benefits are it does help with intermunicipal cooperation. The town of Lunenburg has not had a functioning police board, and so this would solve that issue for them. Crime doesn't respect municipal boundaries. The RCMP is the same provider, and so it would provide that regional government's perspective, and it will also save the RCMP some administrative burden in that instead of preparing multiple reports for multiple individual boards, they would prepare the same report based on the same data that they're already doing, but they wouldn't have to do it 3 times. They'd do it a single time. So the police board endorsed after discussion and recommended to council, as you can see in your package today, that council proceed. The next step, if council endorses it, would be to write a letter to the minister pending approval from the other units, of course.
This was a part of the inquiry that all municipalities have active police advisory boards.
Yes.
And that's when the town of Lunenburg reached out, correct?
Yes, it was at least in part spurred by the fact that the Mass Casualties Commission
Yes.
recommended that the province do a better job paying attention to local police boards. And so they started checking around to see which municipalities were operating with an active board. They've also, since the issuance of that report, done a slightly better job ensuring that the provincial appointees are in place. I know we have struggled with that in the past. So they have, the Department of Justice has been working to try and improve their oversight of those boards. Lunenburg is likely responding to a request from the Department of Justice to get their board active and functioning again.
And the staff sergeant for the District of Lunenburg, the town of Mahone Bay, the town of Lunenburg is one person.
Yes.
And that'd be Staff Sergeant Victor Whalen.
Yes. And
So
the
it makes sense for this to be one meeting rather than having 3 separate meetings in 3 different municipal units.
Yes, and I should have mentioned the policing service provider is supportive of the
Yes.
recommendation.
So I would ask Councillor Hubley if she'd be prepared to move that motion.
Yes, thank you. To our Honor Mayor Bella Rigetson and members of council, I move that municipal council support the creation of a joint police advisory board comprising of the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, the town of Mahone Bay, the town of Lunenburg, and authorize the mayor to write a joint letter to the Provincial Department of Justice requesting ministerial approval for a joint board, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Hubley. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Haysom. Discussion on the motion. Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We will move down to 11.1, Planning Department. 11.1.1, first reading, coastal protection, MPS and land use bylaw amendments. Municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. And we have Ella and Reed with us today. And maybe as you're doing this, you can explain the process from first reading to the public consultation that happens after first reading.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'll get set up. Good morning, everyone. There's a staff report prepared for today, which outlines some recommended next steps. So probably most importantly is scheduling of a second, or I should say, a public hearing, which is the formal opportunity for anyone to provide comments on the proposed regulations. But as a part of that, we've also suggested that the interim period between now and then be some public information meetings be held and that would be, I think someone brought it up earlier, there was engagement that happened earlier on in this process. These would be information meetings. So staff would be able to give an overview of what the regulations are or proposed to be and answer questions about people's particular situations, as opposed to gathering their input on what the regulations should be, and that because that occurred last year. So that there are some. So the motions that are part of today include a proposed public hearing date. They don't include proposed public information meeting dates or locations. The hope was that council would want to have a discussion about where those locations would be, and then we can take that information back and set those, set those specific dates and times. But we've had some discussions internally with staff around the hearing date being proposed, and we think there aren't a lot of options between now and we get into July. We know that the FCM, there's some other kind of things that have to be moved around a little bit. So there's just a couple of the kind of engagement pieces that would be kind of next steps from here.
Okay, so again, typically there would be a date here, and it may be more than one date. It does not only have to be one date. It depends on the demand for people who are wanting to speak at these as well. This is the public's opportunity at the public hearing. You're talking information sessions
Yes,
first.
that's correct.
And we did tell the public when we traveled around doing the original gathering input and consultation that it would come back to them, and then the public hearing as well as that opportunity for them to speak at that time.
That's correct, yeah. So the public hearing that's proposed there, I believe, is June 13th. Is that the 13th? 13th, yeah. 13th, I believe it's a Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. But we had a discussion just last week around what those dates might be, and I believe Tom and Jeff and I kind of put that date forward as something that we suggested would work well, just I think in terms of council and availability. And that suggestion would be that would be an evening special meeting. I believe that would be the best kind of option for members of the public to attend as well.
Okay, so please go ahead with your information presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So we'll start a bit with the timeline of where we started and where we are now, and I guess where we're heading. We all started with council direction at spring 2023, asking staff to start doing a research regarding coastal protection after the province postponed the Coastal Protection Act. We had several council workshops, staff prepared presentations and had some engagements with the community. After that, we created a What We Heard report based on the public's input. We also had some alternative recommendations for council, and after council approved the alternative recommendations, they directed staff to go and start draft the regulations. And today we are at the first reading for the regulatory proposed coastal protection, and we provided a report for council. and it also was circulated on social media and our Engage site, so the public had the chance to review the proposed amendments and the new proposed land use bylaw and the report for today's council meeting. So out of the proposed regulations, there's also general regulations that apply to all, whether if it's the coastal flooding, coastal erosion, and sensitive coastal ecosystems. The first one was that council decided on a regulatory boundary for the coastal protection regulations, which means it will apply to all MODL's coastline, excluding all rivers. And another one was the education and awareness initiatives for all topics that we are discussing that are part of the coastal protection regulations, with a 5-year policy review cycle. So for coastal flooding, we are proposing a 3.97 meter habitable building elevation requirement. It's important to recognize and to note that the 1.57 meter elevation sea level rise is based on the most up-to-date data from the federal government, from Natural Resources Canada, and it is based on the IPCC newest report. It is not using the RCP older emission scenario that was discussed that shows a different elevation sea level rise. We're using the CHIMP 6, and it has a different emission scenario where it shows that with the 8.5 scenario, so it means the 95 percentile, the sea level rise for Lunenburg County is 1.57 meters. There are other factors that needs to get into consideration. It's not just the sea level rise, it's a storm surge and the highest tides. So storm surge and it's based on local information, storm surge for our municipality is based on Hurricane Juan, and it is 1.63 meters. In addition to that, there's highest tides, and that was based on the Department of Fisheries and Oceans number that is coming from Riverport infrastructure that they have there that is measured on 77 centimeters. So combining the sea level rise by 2100, which is 1.57 meters, and the 1.63 storm surge, and the highest tides number comes up to 3.97 meters. Again, this is just for habitable buildings, so you can still build within the setback. It's just that you can either build on stilts, so your residential space, your living space will be meeting the elevation requirement. You can either build a garage underneath or infill. So you have other opportunities. As long as the residential space, the habitable space, is meeting the elevation requirement. So meaning bedrooms, kitchen, living room, and bathrooms. Under what is not habitable space, considered to be inhabitable space, can be below the 3.97 meters. There will be some exemptions for, again, non-habitable accessory uses, as I mentioned, but also other uses that are marine-related uses and other uses that are not necessarily going to be attached to the main structure, to the main building. Also, we are recommending a non-conforming allowances, so any building that existed prior to the regulations coming into effect are considered to be non-conforming building structures, and they can be built within 100%, they can expand within 100% within the elevation area. Even though it could be a habitable space, it can still be built within that elevation, below the elevation requirement, because it existed, so it can be reconstructed, it can be repaired, it can be replaced. It's existing, so it's there. The regulations will not necessarily apply as a new development. There will be also flexibility for existing structures. So if a property owner, for example, decides that he wants to move or raise up their structure to meet the elevation requirement, so their residential space will meet the elevation requirement, we are recommending that council will agree to do so. So there will be some flexibility from other land use regulations, whether if it's a setback from a street line or from a side setbacks, etc. It is important to note, though, that under the coastal flooding, we recommended for council to prohibit institutional uses, and that is because we want to minimize the need for emergency evacuation in areas that are prone to be flooded. So institutional uses are, under the proposed regulations, are prohibited within the 3.97 meter of the coastal flooding area. Any questions before I move on to? Okay.
Councillor DeLong.
Thank you. I just would like you to further clarify, if possible, that sea level rise is not expected to hit 3.97, that is the, highest high tide marker.
That is correct. So sea level rise is expected to rise to 1.57 meters by 2100. The additional factors, like a storm surge, that you need to take into consideration when you have storm events, or for example, the highest tides, are some of the factors that you need to take into consideration when you're thinking about the elevation requirement for buildings. Again, there are other factors that we didn't take into consideration, like wave effects and other things that come with a severe storm. But it is a best practice to use these three factors: sea level rise by 2100, a storm surge, and highest tides. Altogether, two of them have localized numbers, which is the Hurricane Juan number, like the storm surge, and the highest tides are localized numbers, whereas the 1.57 meter elevation sea level rise we received from Natural Resources Canada, which means the federal government. It's their newest data that they have. It is yet not, it's not public yet, but it is going to be public very soon. We are working in collaboration with Natural Resources Canada right now because they are working on a new map. And that 1.57 meters is actually localized to Lunenburg County. But it's not, it's a scenario. It's not a fixed number that was actually happening in the past. So the 3.97 meters, it's not a sea level rise. It's an elevation requirement combining several factors when we have hurricanes and other storms that we already seen happening.
Yeah, just for clarification as well, the intention of these regulations is to avoid worst case scenarios for flooding. The objective is that you're not kind of meeting the expected water level, but you're exceeding it. So this would, 3.97 meter would be a confluence of several kind of worst case things happening. So the sea level rise, which is projected, is on the worst side, and then in combination with high tide and a severe storm. Of course, we have seen those events occur, and we know even in Fiona on the North Shore, they experienced flooding that was meeting the province's mapping for projected out to 2100 already. So in some ways this is saying it's an unlikely scenario, but on the other hand, we also have the experience of the different events that have occurred recently, and so it's aiming to be not at the water level, but above it to keep people safe.
And just to add to Reed's point, we are using what is for sea level rise. We are considering what is the suggested 95 percentile that is suggested by the province and the federal government. It's not the most extreme scenario. The most extreme scenario is the enhanced scenario, where it means that we are adding additional 60 centimeters into that number, expecting that the Antarctic ice sheets will melt. We're not taking that into consideration within that number that we are proposing.
Continue.
So for coastal erosion, staff already discussed with council and provided reports about different erosion scenarios that can occur along the coastline. For the coastal regulations, we are proposing a 30-meter erosion risk area. With them, it's a 30 meters, but again, it can be reduced through a study to a minimum of 15 meters. It's similar to what Region of Queens is doing. That 15 meters, though, will be we are proposing it to be a vegetative buffer to minimize erosion risks, and also it's good for the ecosystem. But it is known and it's scientifically based that a vegetative buffer reduces erosion and also the risk of flooding. There are going to be some exemptions for non-habitable marine-related uses, whether if it's a boathouse, a wharf, a garage even, so not necessarily marine-related, but there are exemptions for, again, uses that are not habitable spaces. So there are several uses under that umbrella that can be happening within the setback and does not need to necessarily maintain the 30 meters. And there's also, again, non-conforming allowances for existing structures that are located already on the coastline, on that area, that are located within that 30-meter erosion risk area, that can expand, that can be relocated, that can be replaced, rebuilt, etc. So there are, again, exemptions for buildings that already are existing.
So before you go off this slide, and I'm looking at the picture at the bottom with the washed away highway, and when we talk about the coastal erosion and the 15-meter setback and the vegetated setback, vegetation in this particular case, and as we see along our highways, the armor rock is being used by transportation and so on to definitely try to keep our highway system intact along our coastal roads. That still, under the Transportation Act, would be permitted to allow that to happen, because a vegetated setback in this particular, without moving the infrastructure itself.
That is correct, and also not just for transportation. The municipality cannot regulate rock walls or rock armoring. That is under the provincial regulations. So if a property owner, even if it's not provincial road, but let's say it's a property owner wants to build a rock armoring below the higher ordinary watermark, they can do so by applying to the province. It's not under municipal authority to do so.
And it's recommended, the vegetated setback, correct?
The vegetated buffer is not recommended. It's a fixed 15-meter that anyway the property owner needs to maintain, but closer to the water, below the ordinary high water mark, if a property owner wants to build a rock armoring, they can do so. Because it's not a municipal, we don't have the jurisdiction to regulate rock armoring.
Councillor Greek.
Thank you. A little bit ago, you said about infilling as a possibility. Is that also an application through the province?
That was in relation to when you talked about stilts or putting a building infilling to the non-habitable space you were referring to. So if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think it's important to add a distinction between infilling into waterways versus infilling on a lot. So the infilling that we're talking about for those areas that are at risk of flooding would be just infilling on the existing lot to bring up the level of the lot, so that you might want to build your house at just a normal design, but you raise the earth below it to reach that elevation requirement. So that would be one way that people could kind of flood-proof their property would be just to raise up the level. If somebody's looking to infill into the water, maybe extend out, that's absolutely a provincial jurisdiction, and we have some of those water lots that are the pre-Confederation scenario where some of that is permitted. But again, whatever the case is, if you're dealing with in-water works, you're dealing with the province and likely also the federal government for that as well.
Councillor Vino.
Thank you. I do have a question regarding the coastal erosion, and I'm going to refer to my notes so I use the right terminology. So in the coastal protection regulations, we're saying that for sensitive coastal ecosystems, a coastal erosion risk assessment is required if developing in this area. What is there a document that we are referring to? And I actually had a resident reach out as well and said that they weren't able to locate this document. and it would come back to consistency to make sure everybody's following the same regulations. So does this document exist, and where would residents find it? And should that be referenced in the section 4.14.5?
Yep, yes, absolutely. And so in section 414.5, the document that's referenced is the Coastal Erosion Risk Factor Assessment Standard Technical Background and Guidance Report. It's a mouthful, but essentially it outlines, it outlines all of the steps that somebody who is either an engineer or a surveyor, has the right training, or a geological expert. One of those professions would have the kind of background to carry this out. So there's a guide to it. The province developed this at the time that they were pursuing the original Coastal Protection Act. So we have that. We will have it as a reference for anyone that is interested. So we'd be happy to provide it to a resident of yours or anyone else. And most importantly, our development officer will have that document handy, because she'll be dealing with people who are in that scenario. They're wanting to know what they need to do. It's really going to be those scenarios where people they want to build between 15 meters and 30 meters. And that's the only scenario where people would need to be getting into that. And there would be a cost to that report, so they'll have to weigh, with their certain situation, how constrained they are on their lot. Or they might have a lot where it's just easier and cheaper for them just to build a bit further back and avoid that whole situation.
I appreciate the knowledge in that, because I did receive a few questions on it. I'm going to flip them your way, but it might be a question that comes up in public input, so thank you for being prepared to answer that question.
Continue.
So we're moving to coastal wetlands. And again, here we are at the regulations proposing a 30-meter horizontal coastal wetland setback and a vegetative buffer to protect those wetlands along the coastline that we mapped, and you can see them in the interactive map. There will be some exemptions provided, and we are recommending, again, collaboration with environmental NGOs like Ducks Unlimited, Kingsburg Coastal Conservancy, and other local groups to help delineate more wetlands and understand about areas that are considered to be coastal sensitive ecosystems that we might not be aware of. We are also aware that there is the constraints with we are using the provincial mapping to assess where wetlands are located, and we are aware that there are some constraints with those maps because that map was done a while back and was done based on aerial imaging. So there are some areas where it might say there's a wetland and it actually might not be a wetland, or vice versa. So again, there will be some flexibility with that. So if a property owner, for example, says, I do not have a wetland, even though under your map it shows that I do have a wetland area in my property, there is the ability for someone from Nova Scotia Environment to go and assess. And if it's deemed that there's no wetland there, we will remove it from our mapping system, where then the property owner can develop as they wish.
Just to add to that, the way that the policy is written, they would be allowed to do that without going through the amendment process. And so that's an important thing. We don't want people to have to jump through hoops when we know there are some discrepancies, so that flexibility is built in there. They don't need to go through unnecessary approvals. It's mainly just to be able to check it with somebody who has expertise like environment, and if they give us a thumbs up, we'll change the mapping to reflect that without doing the full amendment process.
And on this one, that is saltwater or freshwater wetlands?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it's not specific to being a salt marsh. This would be any wetlands that are very close to the coastline. And so anything that's captured in that band, whether they're freshwater or saltwater.
And that is from the high water mark?
The distance is measured back, or?
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's right.
And the second part to that, we recently, inland, had to change our bylaw in relation to a wetland that was designated that wasn't really a wetland. and used environment, yes.
So as Reed mentioned, we want to reduce that
Level of
level of-
democracy, or
exactly.
not democracy, of
No,
regulation.
Yeah.
Regulation.
Bureaucracy.
The opposite, the opposite.
So the last piece here, we've had some inquiries, and we expect that we'll continue to have some questions about where these regulations apply and what kind of impact they may have. So we brought this forward in a presentation previously, but just in terms of the numbers, so we did an analysis looking at, are there any properties here that these regulations may have a prohibitive effect on building in the future? And so as part of that process, there was just over 100 privately owned properties that are currently vacant, where it's unlikely that owners would be able to develop residential uses on in the future. There are a lot of kind of caveats around that. This is a desktop exercise, so there are certain things we don't know about those properties. We tried to be as specific as we can by coming up with some parameters. For example, we limit it to those which are over 600 square meters. We would deem something smaller than that to be very difficult to obtain septic system approval, and so therefore it would be difficult to get a building permit on lots like that. So we were able to kind of come up with a list of properties in that way, but we still don't have the ability to kind of look at the shape of lots, so we could have some very long, narrow ones. We know out of once we started narrowing it down, there are 69 of these that we don't even know who the owners are. So it's, that's unlikely that those kinds of properties would have, development interest. And so there's a lot of other factors here that, there's an example of some of those kind of long, narrow properties that we're just showing, just an excerpt from a map. Those are the kinds of properties that would be potentially captured under this category of you wouldn't be able to build on those in the future. But I think that overall the likelihood of someone looking to build on some of those very kind of long, narrow ones is unlikely as well. Some of these end up as they are, there were roads put in, previous erosion. Some people may own the property across the road and have a little piece that it's maybe serving as an access point. So there's a lot of different factors that we can't kind of, we don't know because we haven't gone out to each one and talked to each owner. But we did want to bring this forward just to identify that there were approximately 111 that fall into that category of being the most impacted by the proposed regulations.
Councillor Haysom.
Sorry, thank you. Just to get that clarification, out of the 111, you said approximately 69 of them are or you're just not sure who owns them, or that's owner unknown, or?
Yeah, it's
no ownership.
That's right, yeah. So that would be an indication that there's not somebody looking to build, because if we don't even know who the owner is, it would be, I guess, hard for them to get a permit.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Hobley.
Tried to hold my comment to the end. 111 privately owned vacant properties might seem like absolutely nothing to some people, but for people that have worked their whole lives for their property, to be told that, oh, sorry, you can't develop this, I would rather see an education and awareness campaign come in before we start telling people what they worked for their whole life is worthless.
Deputy Mayor Oikel.
Thank you. Of the 111, you said 69 were probably, so it's only 50-some, right? I would like to see specifically those people that we know of their addresses receive notification about the first reading, like that they personally know of the implications of it so that they can make, no, that they can voice their opinion and thoughts, because perhaps they don't care, because, as you said, they weren't planning to do anything with it anyway. And maybe they're very happy that it's going to be, something's going to be done as far as protecting it.
So my comment, 111 privately owned vacant properties, development may be impacted. Does that mean I may be able to build something on stilts? I may be able to do a different type? Or these properties here definitely would not, because we all know that traditional septic systems, we can get other forms of composting, toilets and whatever else. So there's other means for waste, solid waste disposal, so.
Yeah, I guess that, this is only looking at those regulations that are the most prohibitive. So it's the wetland setback and the 15-meter erosion setback that are captured under this category. So our view, yeah, we can't say exactly that it could not be done, because you would need to do a site-by-site analysis and look at, you know, that setback line. So we're using things like that blue area on the map there, that's showing us where we think the water line is, and measuring back from that. If somebody went out on the site and actually looked at the high water mark and used a real measurement, then they would for sure determine whether something is, you know, covering the whole lot, or maybe there's a portion that's still available. So that's why we can't say with 100% certainty that these are non-developable from this high level. But the regulations that would affect those properties are not the flood one, because the flood one, as you said, you can build up, you can find other ways to build. These are the ones that would say no development in that area.
So again, and I did have some issue with the wetlands, trying to get my head around what it actually meant, because a wetland, I'm going to use that green area on the map as a wetland, I know. And you have the water, you have the beginning of the wetland, which is within that meter reach that you cannot build. So then you have a very deep wetland. So then you get to the back of the wetland. Then do you have to be another 100 feet behind that? And that's what renders a lot of properties undevelopable,
and I think
based on that.
That's right. And you know, I think that, as we were just talking about, it is important that if that wetland is not accurately there, then those folks can come in and there's an easy way, relatively easy way to make sure that the mapping is right. So if we've got incorrect wetland mapping showing that a property is not developable, and they come in and say, look, there's no wetland, then there's this process we can go through and say, yep, that's fine, you can build there. So we certainly don't want to be, you know, no one wants to see properties become undevelopable because of something that doesn't exist. So it's important that we have those avenues for people to be able to indicate where things are on the ground.
And currently, environment setback from a wetland to build?
They don't have a setback from the wetland. They just regulate in the wetland. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Any further questions? Continue.
So the report includes 3 different motions. Those relate to amendments to the existing municipal planning strategy. So that's an existing document. So there have been new amendments introduced to that. In addition, there's been what's included is a draft new municipal-wide land use bylaw. So up until this point, there hasn't been a municipal-wide land use bylaw. The kind of larger 2040 project would involve the creation of a larger municipal-wide land use bylaw, but what is in the council package and what's been presented online is a kind of shorter version of that document, but it's needed. It has all the certain components of it to kind of enable these regulations. As well, there's the kind of proposed date for June 13th for a public hearing. And then the request for council to have some input so we can put together some of those public information sessions in between now and that public hearing date.
So again, once we do first reading, that's when the clock starts ticking, correct?
That's right. Yep. So as of with the recent changes to the Municipal Government Act, putting stuff on our website will now serve as the official
Yes.
notice. So what we would do would be to, if council wishes to pass first reading today, those will get up today on the website. They would be published in a newspaper as well, but we're prepared in terms of, reviewing new things that are coming in. Those new things would be in effect as of today.
Councillor Hubley.
So just another comment. So I respect your knowledge and the work you've put into this, but at the end of the day, we're still going to have two sets of guidelines or regulations or whatever you want to call it. Two different messages out there just equals confusion, and I think we're creating it.
Should I answer that?
In reference to the provincial regulations and the regulations proposed here. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'm looking at the motion, and I've been back and forth on this so many times. I've gotten many, many phone calls from people that want this in place. They actually don't live on the coast, but they want it in place. I understand that. I understand that we need to take care of our coastlines and stuff. But the bottom line is, we were shoved into this position, and I still say it from the beginning, because of a rock wall on Crescent Beach. Something that should have been done by the province long ago was put in our lap. And for me to have to tell people how far back they can build along the coast, they got to have some common sense. I mean, I know this comes down to insurance, and I don't even want to go in that direction right now, but this has to come down to common sense. It has to come down to people, if you're going to build along the coast and your insurance company isn't going to insure you, what does that mean for us as a building department and issuing building permits? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I know a good one. So anyway, I'm thinking that I can't support this because I cannot. Everybody says it's not going to affect your inland planning. It's not going to affect your rivers and streams and lakes. I don't believe that it won't. So right now, I just cannot support it. Thank you.
Councillor Haysom.
Thanks. Just need to clarify a couple of things. So inland flooding will definitely be addressed through the flood mapping. We can't get away from that. That's happening one way or the other. And it has nothing to do with coastal. So the second thing that I think is important, once again, to highlight is that Nova Scotia Environment representatives sat here, told us that our information was more accurate, more granular, more related to the local area, and was using the most up-to-date information and the most up-to-date measurements. So the province has put forward some recommendations, not regulations, and they are not as accurate. They have sat here themselves and said, your information is better. The second thing I'd like to say is that as recently as last week, the Minister of Environment sat in front of about 150 municipal representatives and implored them to do the work that the province won't do. MODL is doing that work. We have been commended by that same minister in the legislature. We are doing the hard work that the province has, yes, absolutely, abdicated responsibility for, and we are doing it. We're doing a good job. Thank you.
Councillor Vino.
At the last time that this topic came to council, I spoke about the differences in, and I used the word regulations, but I wasn't smoking. It's recommendations, not regulations. So this time my vote will be a little different. I attended the meeting that Letha spoke of last week, and it was a real eye-opener as to what's come down, and therefore we'll be supporting this motion to get this going and hopefully leading the way.
So we do have 3 motions. And again, this is not passing the coastal protection bylaw today. This is moving forward with first reading. First reading, there will be information sessions between first reading and the public hearing. The public hearing date is proposed for June 13th. At that time, there will be lots of opportunity for the public to voice their concerns. Then it will come back for second reading. It is at second reading that this actually comes into effect or does not come into effect based on, or we can send it back to staff to revisit based on the public consultation or input that we receive at the public hearing. I know some have said that we're only doing lip service to this and it's a done deal. I have been at public hearings where they have not moved forward, and I have been at many public hearings that have moved forward. And this is your opportunity as the public to speak to the issues that you would like to speak to at that time, or bring forward why you think it's important and why you disagree with it, if that's the reasoning. But by all means, we encourage the public to come out and voice their opinions. So at this time, I will go to the first motion, and I would ask if Councillor Haysom would be prepared to move the first motion.
Thank you. To Her Honor Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that Municipal Council give notice of its intention to repeal the existing municipal planning strategy and replace it with the amended municipal planning strategy as presented, which incorporates formatting, numbering, and accessibility changes to existing sections, as well as the addition of new sections containing policies related to coastal protection and to conduct first reading, and I so move.
So moved by Councillor Haysom. Is there a seconder? Seconded. I seen Councillor Wynot. Discussion on the motion. So this is to do those necessary bylaw changes, formatting, and also to move forward with first reading. Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed is Councillor Hubley and Councillor Moore. Motion is carried. We will move to the second part, and I would ask Councillor Bell if he would be prepared to move the second part.
To her Mayor, to Her Honor Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that Municipal Council give notice of its intention to adopt the new municipal-wide land use bylaw as presented and to conduct first reading. I so move.
Moved by Councillor Bell. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Haysom. Discussion on the motion. Question has been called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed is Councillor Hubley and Councillor Moore. Motion is carried. We will go to the third part, and I would ask Councillor DeLong if she would be prepared to move that motion.
Yes, thank you. To Her Honor, Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that Municipal Council set a date and time for a public hearing for the amended municipal planning strategy and new municipal-wide land use bylaw regulations on June 13th, 2024 in the council chambers, and further, that Municipal Council instruct staff to schedule public information meetings to inform residents about the implications of the new regulations prior to that public hearing, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor DeLong, seconded by Councillor Vino. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Hubley.
So I'm in favor of going out to the public and hearing what they have to say, but I am not going to vote in favor of this motion because it is the amended planning strategy.
Councillor Moore. No, I'm good. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Royko.
So I just want to clarify. Public information sessions is when we're giving the information to the public, correct? And that the only time like, they're of course going to say things at those meetings, but it's only at the public hearing or letters brought in that will be considered. Is that correct?
The information will be considered at the public hearing. That
Correct.
is the
Thank you.
public's opportunity to be on the record.
Okay. And how many public information sessions will we be having?
Again, we will check those schedules, and what allows will definitely, and we have to look at locations for those so that they're spread out as well.
Thank you.
Reed, did you want to comment?
Yeah, if council wanted to, I know in the past, there's been some opportunities just to have a bit of feedback for staff. I mean, I think we've talked about the opportunity to have, there possibly have 2 of those public information settings, kind of one on each side of the river. You know, could be Petite and Riverport, or if there's other locations that make sense on either side. You know, that I think for in our view, we're kind of working within the scope of kind of 1 week. So we'd be trying to fit things into that week. But of course, if there's other views on that, like, we were looking for some input if needed.
I would think that the both sides of the river, I know we're going to get another comment here from the representative from the Lunenburg area. So, Councillor Vino.
You know what I'm going to say, don't you? We can't
Tancook.
We can't forget about Tancook. It's an island. It's imperative that we go out there and make that opportunity.
Again,
for
and there may be
residents.
opportunities for virtual if time doesn't allow, but the first choice is definitely in person by a long shot. Sorry, guys. So if that does allow, then that definitely would be the preferred option to do that. And again, for council members, if you are not present at the public hearing, you are not able to vote at second reading. That is how the Municipal Government Act works. So you do need to be present. And you'd have to be present for all of those meetings? If no, sorry, there is only one public hearing, June 13th, yes. Go ahead.
I was going to ask about the presence of all public meetings, how that worked. And I do know in the past we've done it on a Tuesday and had our meeting out on Tancook, which the residents really liked. So that might be an opportunity as well.
So those are things that we will look at, but the both sides of the river is definitely something that makes sense to have one in the Riverport area, and we did have information or sessions there when we started this process as well as in Petite. So is that enough direction from that piece? And we did not vote on number 3 yet. So, any further questions? Question called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed is Councillor Hubley and Councillor Moore. Motion is carried. We will now move down to 11.2. Where am I? 11.1.2. Proposed amendments to Area Advisory Committee terms of reference. And Ella, that is you. Please take it away.
So on January 23rd, 2024, a municipal council approved the proposed amendments to the Village of Hebville terms of reference and directed staff to update all Area Advisory Committee terms of references to reflect the same revisions that were done for the Hebville's Area Advisory Committee terms of references. However, on April 23rd, Municipal Council deferred the Area Advisory Committee's terms of reference package because there was a policy 004 that was referenced in the TORs, but was not available online. Following Council's direction, staff conducted a comprehensive review and revised the planned areas committees as well as Hebville's for several elements that were revised. The first one that was revised was that all terms of reference documents are in the same accessibility format as it is a policy, and most of the documents were just not accessible in terms of their font size and the way that they were written. Another thing that was revised were there was a lot of policies that were referenced in the TORs are not existing anymore, are not relevant to the terms of reference. At the same time, we also added a clause regarding council's motion that all area advisory committees will be dissolved on the effective date when the MODL 2040 project will come into effect, which means the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. And another revision that we've done since the last time that we were here, we removed policy 004 from all the terms of references, and because area advisory committees were never received an honorarium, so there's no need for that to be references in the term of reference. So we just removed it instead of keeping it there.
Okay, I would ask Planning Advisory, Councillor Moore, if she'd be prepared to move that motion.
Juruana Mayor Bolivar Getson, members of council. I move that municipal council approve the proposed amendments to the Blockhouse, Hempford, Forest, Oakland, Princess Inlet, and area, Riverport and District, and Village of Headwell Area Advisory Committee's terms of reference as presented, and I so move.
Moved by Councillor Moore. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Vino. Discussion on the motion. Councillor DeLong.
Just to confirm, will these changes be submitted to the chairs for the AACs once they've been made?
Once the revisions are made, are approved, because they're already made, we will reach out to all area advisory committees and send them the terms of reference so that they will be aware.
Supplementary, Councillor DeLong.
This is almost a throwaway question. What order are these written in? Because it's not alphabetical and it's not by date. It's just each one in a random order? Never mind.
As in the
like Oakland and then Blockhouse and then Princess. Just no order. Okay. Sorry.
They are the list of our area advisory committees.
In random order. That's fine. Sorry.
Okay. We do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We will move down to 11.2.2 under recreations, and this is a Pro Kids Update 23-24. And Tissy, you're going to walk us through this.
Bear with me, I don't know how to work this. Do I just plug this in and it'll go there? Magic?
No magic there.
Tina's got the magic finger, okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. All right. So this is just an information piece to provide a recap on where the Pro Kids funds went for 2023-2024. So as I hope you are all very aware, Pro Kids stands for Positive Recreation Opportunities for Kids. It's our program to provide financial assistance for youth to participate in recreational, cultural, and sport activities for the municipality. So the top 5 funded activities for 2023-2024 were music, dance, camps or day camps, miscellaneous sports, and swimming. So our total number of recipients in those 5 categories were 199, and a total of 305 out of all the categories. I just gave you the top 5. As opposed to, you can see from the previous year, we've jumped quite a bit. So we had quite an uptake in Pro Kids requests.
Councillor Haysom.
Do you have an idea of why? Do you think it's just is it a cost of living thing? Is it people coming back to activities post sort of COVID and everything, or it's just such a wonderful jump to see that that these applications are being funded.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. We've seen an uptake of new applications from new recipients that hadn't applied for ProKids before. So I think the news about ProKids is spreading a little bit more, so people know that it's available. And the cost of living and the cost of programming has gone up so much that I think people are really looking for financial support.
Just from a recipient point of view, could there be multiple?
So within these numbers, this is multiple children, like multiple applications. So it's not the final number of how many individuals. So our total number of individuals funded in 2023-24 was 137, which you'll see on the next slide. This is the total number of applications funded. Yep. So knowing that an applicant can apply once per season, they could apply up to 4 times a year.
Councillor Vino.
I just had a question on the music, with that number being so high. I would have, I guess, misleading, I would have thought it would have been a different category. Is there one specific company or person that is using the program, or is it multiple music avenues?
It's multiple. Probably the biggest one would be Buchanan's House of Music out of Mahone Bay. They have a lot of participants funded through ProKids, but we have a lot of different instructors that funded through ProKids. So music is definitely the highest, which is great because there's other funding opportunities for kids in Nova Scotia through KidSport for sports specific, and then there's Jumpstart for sport and physical activity. So the one thing with ProKids is they're able to do the cultural activities, which no other funding opportunity provides. So it's great to see that that is the number one.
Yeah, that would make sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So just a breakdown by age category for 2023-24. So here you can see the total number of recipients is 137. The biggest age group was 5 to 12, with 13 to 18-year-olds being the next largest. This is, excuse me, this is a breakdown by district. So again, on the far right is the actual number of recipients. The middle one was the number of applications. That number differs from the 305, I think it was, because not included in this are equipment costs. So those are kind of additional applications, for participants just for the equipment costs to accompany their application for registration costs. So that's kind of where that discrepancy is on that number. So you can see from 2022 to 2023, again, those 2022-2023 numbers, the 186, those are the comparable to the 274, not the actual number of recipients, individual participants. Does that make sense?
Deputy Mayor Boygle.
Could you explain Mahone Bay?
Right. So we do fund, Mahone Bay has provided some funding assistance so that we can deliver their program for town residents. So this will be actually the last year that we'll be doing that, and then they're going to be looking at starting their own funding assistance program.
I guess I'm just looking at District 8 and District 9 having the higher numbers, I believe, and that's also where the music piece probably comes into play. With having the highest amount of people. Councillor DeLong.
I hate to admit that I don't understand what you just said, but could you please explain this table for me, just the actual on the right-hand side versus the numbers for the years?
So for the middle column, the 2023-2024, that is the total number of applications received, not individuals. So where I said that an applicant can apply up to 4 times a year, so there could be multiple applications per individual. The last column is the actual number of recipients, so that is the individuals, total number of individuals receiving funding. Good.
Continue.
Just wanted to highlight a couple of our funding partners. As you saw this morning, United Way has been a wonderful supporter of our program. Last year, 2023-2024, we received $8,000 in grant funding from them. So this year, as you heard this morning, it's up to $10,000 based on the demand that we've been getting on our program. We did apply for more funding and we're successful. Another annual partner is the Rotary Club of Lunenburg. They provide a minimum of $2,000 annually for Pro Kids based on their fundraising efforts. It could fluctuate higher than $2,000. A couple other financial partners to note is Pleasant Paddling. They hold upwards of 2 fundraisers a year, and their funding comes to Pro Kids. So we received, I believe, $1,800 from them last year from their fundraising efforts. We also held a very successful fundraiser at the end of last summer. So at the end of each summer, my summer staff do a large Pro Kids fundraiser at the Mark. So last year they brought in over $2,500. And then we have a lot of private donors and then individual donations at free programs. We always have our donation can that people can donate as well. And then I just wanted to provide some of the testimonials we got from participants and parents in the last year. I won't read through all of them, but a million thank yous. Having the opportunity to learn and play violin means the world to our little girl. Without Pro Kids, it wouldn't be possible. Oh my goodness, Pro Kids just made my day and my children's day. They are literally jumping with joy at the news, almost as excited as Christmas Day. Wow, thank you, a million thank yous from all sides of our hearts. So this is why we do it. Right here. It's for the kids.
And hopefully our new program will have those same testimonials, and I'm sure they will be with our Pro Fund.
Yep, so far Pro Fund is off to a good start.
Was this the last?
That was it.
Thank you very much. We also have Recreation 11.2.2 Major Events Grant Application South Shore Exhibition.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The report before you pertains to a major event grant application filed by the South Shore Exhibition. The exhibition will take place from July 22nd to 28th, and throughout the event, the exhibition attracts an estimated 40,000 attendees from across Nova Scotia and Maine. This event creates a positive economic impact through the increased spending at local restaurants, hotels, and businesses. The grant application filed by the South Shore Exhibition fulfills the eligibility requirements for this grant and includes a funding request for $5,000 to support their event. To ensure we maintain funds in the budget for other major event grant applications during this fiscal, staff recommends that Council approve the South Shore Exhibition's funding request in the amount of $3,500.
In relation to that, was that the amount requested by the exhibition?
So the amount requested was $5,000, but our recommendation is $3,500 for this approval.
And the amount that we would have given them last year, this is one of the largest events that we have on the South Shore, actually.
So the amount that we gave them last year was $5,000, and their funding request last year was for $20,000. So I believe that their request was so high because it was their first time applying under that grant, and they were going for the full amount which you can qualify for, which is $20,000. This year, we've already received more applications than we normally would at this point in time, which is why we're recommending $3,500 opposed to the $5,000 that we granted them last year.
Is there room in the budget for 5?
There's room in the budget for 5 at this current time. However, we recently met with the group facilitating the Mobility Cup, which will happen at the Lunenburg Yacht Club this summer, and that's an international event, so we are anticipating an application to come through from them, and with the other ones that we have, we're expecting that we'll fund that in a greater amount because it's an international event.
Okay. All right.
Sure.
Sorry,
Is
Councillor
this-
Moore.
Is this the same grant that the July 1st comes out of?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So, but if a group applies for the July 1st Canada Day celebration, their budget has to be over
Yes.
$30,000 in order to
Yeah,
qualify. So it
yep.
is the same grant that the New Germany Canada Day was funded through last year.
In Bridgewater, yes.
In
Thank you.
Bridgewater.
Thank you.
So it sounds like we have a lot more events and probably need for dollar increase in this fund based on the applications. Councillor Greek, would you be prepared to move this motion?
Yes, please, thank you. To her honor, Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that municipal council approve $3,500 from the municipal grant fund to the South Shore exhibition, and I so move.
Is there a seconder? Moved by Councillor Greek. Seconded by Councillor Moore. The question, is that the amount that all groups we're using for then, is the 3,500, or how do we determine the amount?
Well, the amount, it depends on the amount requested. Like, for an example, we have a smaller event that requested $2,000 that will be taking place in Lunenburg. So basically, it's going to be based on how many applications we have and are anticipating, and we only budget $20,000 for this grant. So it's how far can we stretch those funds, given the applications we have coming in, and the ones that we've already met with and are anticipating will come in.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. I know that certain events such as social exhibition may question our smaller amount this year, but I do think the staff gave fair consideration and have given us reasons why they did it, and the fact that other events are coming and that we will need to consider those amounts at that time too. And an international event coming to this area is something significant that we will want to support.
Any further comments? Questions?
Question on the motion.
Question has been called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We will move down to 11.3.1, repeal and replace MODL policy 036, fire and emergency services. And that is our, oh, no, we have our fire services coordinator, Chris Kennedy.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. So at the last meeting, we reviewed the changes to policy MDL 36. Most of it was done for clarification and accessibility. And the main change was the addition of the self-contained breathing apparatus, mandatory testing starting in June of 2025 for the registration cycle.
Okay. Councillor Wynot, would you be prepared to move that motion?
You should drive a yellow fire truck. To her honor, Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that municipal council repeal and replace MODL policy 036, fire and emergency services, as presented. And I so move. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Wynot. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor DeLong. Discussion on the motion. Question has been called for. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We will move down to letter of support. Letter of support re Laconia wind energy proposal. Are you taking this one?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So as council will recall, the company that I refer to as INV Energy or Invenergy had a proposed large-scale wind turbine project that they want to move forward with in the Laconia area, and they have asked council for a letter of support. Council previously did authorize a letter of support for this project based upon a bit of a different scope in a slightly different area. They have refined the boundary for this project. They now have identified the provincial program that they will apply to, and significant to our municipality, the wind turbines would be an 86.4 megawatt facility, and it would, if the proposal is accepted by the province and the project goes ahead, the annual tax revenue for the municipality would be approximately $600,000. They also provide community support to organizations in the area, which they identify, and they work with the communities to provide funding. They have been, throughout this process, involved with staff to ensure that what they're doing, what they're proposing, is not contrary to anything that we'd be looking to in the future municipal planning strategy or land use bylaw. So the recommendation is that council once again approve the mayor to sign this letter of support, which would be submitted by INV Energy or Invenergy as part of their application for the Laconia Wind Energy Project.
And I would ask Deputy Mayor Oikel if she'd be prepared to move that motion.
Certainly. To her honor, Mayor Bolivar Getson and members of council, I move that Municipal Council authorize the mayor to sign the proposed letter of support for the Invenergy Laconia Wind Energy Center proposal as presented, and I so move.
So moved by Deputy Mayor Oikel, seconded by Councillor Bell. Discussion on the motion. Again, this is the proposal coming back. It's been in the works now for a few years, actually, since this project originally started. I have Deputy Mayor Oikel.
I just want to comment in the fact that I have sat in on the community meetings that they've had with members of the community who are very interested in the opportunity that they will be able to have monies coming in for their communities. And so that's already in place, as well as they have all the properties that they need. So obviously they have community support from residents for this project as well.
Further questions? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. We are down to, now we have till 12:15. If MJSB update, please. Do we have an MJSB update?
Yes, I do. I just
Okay.
have to open it up here on my computer. Okay. This is the MJSB update from April the 24th, 2024. Gabe Walsh gave the compost operation update. On March of 24, the board approved a compost operational review as one of the 12 MJSB strategic priorities for the 24-25 season. Organic revenue is budgeted at over $900,000 for the 24-25 fiscal year, most of which results from tipping fees for incoming organic materials. Sales of finished compost results in an average of $20,800 annually. Compost operations have not been reviewed for several years. Early stages of the review have identified opportunities for reducing processing costs and improving the volume of compost production. A new environmental supervisor started on March the 18th of 2024, and expectations are being aligned for production of finished product for sale and compost giveaway. It is expected the significant material will be available for the general public for the annual compost giveaway in mid-May. Repairs to non-functioning compost processing equipment and infrastructure have also begun early in this fiscal year. This will help to ensure that compost operations are running efficiently and improve processing methods. Significant efforts are being made to process the maximum amount of compost possible to clear the backlog. A significant local market exists for the finished compost, including residential as well as commercial clients. He also reported on the countertop composter update. MJSB staff do not recommend adopting countertop composting units for use by partner units at this time, as the funding is not available from the provincial or federal government. They do not provide a cost-effective upgrade to the current system of organic curbside collection. MJSB staff confirms that there was federal funding available in 2022 and early 2023, but it is not available any longer. Also, Gabe asked the board to endorse a letter to the Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture in support of the province-wide pilot stage leading to full implementation of a provincial end-of-life fishing gear stewardship program. The motion was made and passed. Leslie McFarland, our MJSB COO, after 46 years with the MJSB, Wayside Supervisor Eric Corkum will be retiring this spring, which was mentioned earlier by the mayor. There will be an organized barbecue and appreciation for him. And council, the board and council members are invited to attend. And this information will be given out. As part of the strategic priorities for recruiting and retention, the service award policy was reviewed and the resulting in the proposal to replace it with a new employee recognition policy. John Feeney, Director of Corporate Services, the board approved the non-partner hourly rate of $110 for HR shared services for 2023. The rate was based on the costs plus pricing strategy to ensure that all MJSB costs were being covered. IT department will be looking into the IT situation at the LCLC, with the LCLC feeling they need to turn off the public Wi-Fi when large events are happening at the LCLC, and it will be looked into. This ends my report.
Any questions in relation to the MJSB report? Councillor Haysom.
Thanks, just because it was so compost heavy. I do wonder if there was any follow-up with the presentation that we had about, I don't know how to sort of put it succinctly, the presentation made by Mr. Sager about those modular things to capture emissions and gases from compost sites. Sorry.
That was rescheduled.
Yeah, it was rescheduled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Hubley.
So just to add to this, that Eric's retirement barbecue is May 23rd at 12 o'clock, I think, at the recycling site. I think everyone did get an email if you're planning on attending.
We will get down to Deputy Mayor's update.
I've attended all my meetings that I've been assigned as a councillor, as well as agenda briefings, the Saw Pit Wharf Community Meeting with Mayor Bolivar Getson, Councillor Vino, and Councillor DeLong, as well as last night at the Cape LaHave Island Public Workshop in Petite with the Mayor, Councillor Haysom, Bell, DeLong, Hubley, and Vino. That's my report.
And Mayor's update, we had the Municipal Growth Capital Fund announcement here in our chambers for the announcement of the Cookville wastewater treatment upgrade dollars and the curb sidewalks around what I call the loop. It's catching on, I think. The Bridgewater and Area Chamber of Commerce breakfast, Fire and Emergency Services. I helped open the Epic Pro Wrestling at the exhibition grounds, which they thought would have in attendance around 100 people, and I believe they had over 600, so it was a huge success with money going back to charity, so it was good. Community breakfast, the Bridgewater Band concert that was held at the Michelin Social Club. The NSFM Spring Conference, Professional Development, attended that conference. I will say that it was very well attended. The sessions were exceptional. And the one thing I've always said, that if you don't take something away from the conferences that are held, then I really don't think we're listening, because there was a lot of good information shared. ProFund is a direct result of a conference that we attended and bringing it back and implementing it in our municipality. A lot of times there's not need to reinvent the wheel. It's those opportunities for networking and being able to just sit in on these sessions. There was a lot of provincial representatives at this conference, more so than actually I've seen in a long time. The Minister of Environment, the Minister for Municipal Affairs, there was going to be a presentation. The conference kind of got cut short on Friday morning, I guess by me, when I pulled the plug. I didn't actually pull the plug, but the power went out. And there was no battery backup or generators on site, so it actually ended 3 hours earlier than was anticipated. So there is a virtual part to that morning session that will be held as a direct result of that being, so that people that wasn't at the conference still will have that opportunity to attend that piece of it. The Bridgewater Farmers Market 15th anniversary, which I mentioned earlier, Mother's Day breakfast, the Cape LaHave meeting that was held. The Saw Pit Wharf one, I think, was before the last meeting, but if not, I did attend the Saw Pit Wharf meeting as well, community consultation. I will say that it's great to see the community coming out for consultation. Full house or a great turnout for the Saw Pit Wharf consultation. Great turnout last night for the Cape LaHave meeting. So again, this is opportunity to get that public input and to listen to our residents. And I believe, besides the regular meetings and the other things, fundraisers, that concludes my agenda. So that there concludes the regular agenda. We will be coming back in camera for 3 meetings, for 3 items, if that is your wish, or to continue. It would mean I do have to do we have Lunenburg County Wheels present outside, and I see her looking at me like that. So I do have to run outside, but it's probably 45 minutes left to do. So it is your call. I will leave it at that. So can we come back at 1? Is that enough time, or 1:15? You need to 1:15.
I can be back by 1.
Let's say 1 o'clock we will resume. Thank you.